Hey, I'm Kabain. Lovely to meet you. I've been doing Lorcana. I've been playing Lorcana since the start of set 1, and I kind of want to discuss some of my thoughts and feelings in regards to the newest set that is coming out, set 7. I can never remember how to say the name, but Acacia's Island or something like that. And some of the cards that have started getting revealed as of yesterday. At the time of this recording, the last card that I've seen is the Scrooge McDuck Legendary and the Tamatoa Legendaries respectively. And my opinion may shift on cards as the set gets revealed and more testing comes out. The first thing to talk about, however, is going to be my store champs for me personally, but then if you want to skip over to my personal opinions about what cards I'm quite excited for when it comes to the newest set, I'll put it somewhere on the video. You can just skip to that and just go where you want to pretty much. So going over my set champs and my experimentations. If you are not aware, for this whole entire set champs, I've decided to play anti-meta or off-meta decks or rogue decks in the experimentation to see how good these are and how they feel in terms of Lorcana, and why rogue decks can be good and why rogue decks can be bad is pretty much what I wanted to discuss. So the deck that I did end up playing was Green Blue Mufasa. With You Came Back, I've made a deck list and a guide from a previous video. I'll try and put it somewhere up on the video, or I will put it somewhere. Please go and check it out, as they'll give you a bit more detail. Where in that store champion, I was able to reach top 8. There wasn't a crazy amount of players. I believe it was about 15, so I did not get to top 4, ending up about 7th. The week after in the same store, because I know that some stores are getting a few changes where they can do 2 store champions this time around, I ended up playing the Green-Blue discard deck. I was the only one that was playing it in the store, and I believe there was a good 20 plus players, where I ended up coming 2nd. It really worked. The only thing that I realised, and I will say that with the other decks as well, is that when they break, they break. Moving on to the Sunday, I ended up playing in Swindon for Firestorm cards, where I ended up playing Steel Fasa and winning. And as I said, sometimes the deck just goes, sometimes the deck just doesn't. And the last one I ended up playing was the Amber Sapphire build that I had put a deck guide up to as of the other day. I would also recommend checking that out to get a better understanding of how the deck plays and a better understanding of the thought process behind the build. So on that one, I came 18th out of 29 players. Ended up just going for fun, and I really enjoyed it, to be honest. That was in Milton Keynes with War Games. Please go and check them out. If you want to go and check out the locals that I go to as well, Mr. Gamested in Whitney in Oxfordshire is my personal store. So if you're in the area, please come say hi. So with the kind of experimentation for rogue decks, it comes with a caveat of saying that rogue decks can be very, very potent if done correctly. The problem with rogue decks is it's kind of a one-trick pony. You often have one game plan and it will do what it needs to do. However, it lacks consistency tools outside of obviously what you want to get going. Notable decks for this are Jafar Wheel, where you need to have Jafar and you need to have a whole new world to essentially get yourself going. Mufasa with You Came Back, where you need to get all the combo pieces before you lose pretty much. Or Amber Sapphire, where my deck, you need to get cards like Chicha to be able to actually draw cards and keep yourself occupied and going. So if you ever do play a rogue deck, just be aware of the fact that your consistency tools will probably not be as potent as other decks, especially decks that have generic goods, that being the Madam Mim engine or Hiram, for example. Being able to draw cards is really, really potent in a game like this, especially with one where you want tempo, and that is a huge benefit that they have in comparison to the decks I was playing, where the decks are a little bit slower and they do take a bit more thought process to be able to get these games going for yourself and winning. So if you do play a rogue deck, the likelihood is that you are going to surprise your opponent, and the good side of it is that if you know what the matchup is like and you know how to play against it, you are more likely to win. However, bear in mind, you may have the caveat of playing against your worst matchups, and you just have to figure out how to beat that. In terms of store champs as well, I guess briefly to mention the fact that they are changing the store champs prizes pretty much. That being the first place will be the only one getting the championship mat, and there will be no second place mat as far as we are aware. There, in my opinion, is a good thing. And I can also see why people will be bummed out about it. The main reason being that my games that I won for the finals and both of them were conceded pretty much. So I conceded my first store champs that I got the top 2, and my opponent conceded on the day after for the playmats. The reason for this is because people don't like the champion mats, or they don't actually like the text of the champions mats. But also I can kind of see the fact that you don't want to play a game when you're also very, very tired. So it's a bit of a caveat, and it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Some people are going to be happy, some people are not, because it does encourage a more competitive scene, and it does encourage people to play better and perform well. Obviously, for other people who are joining in and playing, I do feel that stores themselves do have to contribute a little bit more just to make those prizes not as bad as, you know, having everyone being like in the top 8 getting the same amount of boosters, for example. The other thing as well, which I am a very, very big fan of, is the fact that everyone is going to be getting a card from. I don't think it's the next store champs, I think it's the store champs after, where everyone will be getting the enchanted card, but it will be a little bit different. I believe it's going to be quite similar to a normal card, but with a cropped version of the artwork to basically fill in that blank. Yeah, there's not really much else I can say about the store champs. We will see what happens, and I will try and keep updated and try and keep posted for when they do change. But anyway, let's talk about set 7. So set 7 is Stars Reveals, and I'm just pretty much going to go over what I like, what I dislike, but the first thing that we actually have to talk about, if we're going to talk about set 7, is the fact that there are now dual colours. So if you are unaware on how this works, dual colours, you are only allowed to build a deck within the 2 colours that card is. So if you have a Steel Song card, or aka Amber Steel card, you can only run that card in Amber and Steel. You cannot run that in other colours collectively with those with that card. So it is a bit locked to how you build your deck. However, to make it a little bit better, they give the card a bit more of a better effect for this detriment that you would get from just having it locked to those 2 specific colours. So I've looked through a bunch of cards. In the time of this recording, the latest 2 cards that were revealed were the Scrooge McDuck and the Tamatoa Legendaries, respectively, and Sapphire. To quickly go over them, I think the Tamatoa is really, really good. I think everyone thinks the Tamatoa is really, really good. I do want to see a deck which does siphon through your deck and allows you to essentially put a bunch of stuff in your bin to make the Tamatoa a bit more effective. But the fact that on turn 6, or maybe even earlier sometimes, that you can just play whatever your best item is, especially with more items coming out in the game, and then using that to create a board presence is pretty potent, to be honest. The other card, that I do want to talk about is Scrooge McDuck. I'm always an advocate for something that cheats something out. Scrooge McDuck being able to be cheated out for free, I like it, especially with the fact that he goes to 1/1. So I can't really complain. I think both of them are good cards. I think they're both solid, and I can definitely see a testing grounds for them. In terms of other cards that have come out that I'm quite excited about, those would have to be Bolt Superdog and the Troubadour Musical Narrator. the Troubadour's pretty obvious. It's just Ursula with resist, and it's a little bit of a smaller stat line to compensate for it. Well, we say smaller stat line when in reality it's just a better Ursula. Unless you're running the Ursula shift from, I want to say, set 4, set 3, the one that gets your opponent to discard cards from hand whenever you quest with her in some regard, then there is an argument for that Ursula, but I do feel that in a generic Steel Zone build that does not run that, you will be choosing the Troubadour a bit more than the Ursula, pretty much. The Bolt I do feel is good for an aggressive deck, especially with the Simba Legendary from set 6 that allows you to ready all your characters at the end of the turn if he is exerted. It gives you a bit more lineage with how you build your decks and how you want to play, especially in a more aggressive style where you can go turn 1 Daisy, turn 2 Bolt, turn 3 Bolt, turn 4 Simba, and pretty much just go, 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 go. Other cards as well, Lady, and I believe there was Peg as well, that was revealed. I like these kind of aggression decks as well sometimes, especially with decks that allow you to gain the card draw instead of your opponent. So having something for a zoo-like engine to keep going and going and going is very good. It's very nice, actually. The other ones as well that I can kind of think off the top of my head, Hades. There was the Hades card, the 6-drop, that allows you to deal 2 damage to a unit to banish a 3-cost character of your opponent's. I think that's kind of fun. The only card that I do think kind of gets run with that is Prince Eric, the 4-drop from set 3, I wish to say. The 2/2 that quests for 2, and when it dies you can take out something else. So you can use that in conjunction to kill something else. You can also use Teeth and Ambitions as well for that kind of same notion, but this one gives you a 4/6 body with a which quests for 2, and you potentially kill 2 things of your opponent's board. The other cards as well, Giant Cobra is pretty solid, I would admit, with a deck that tends to draw cards, especially with it being Steel Sapphire. You are likely to, discard something and gain 2 lore. It's a bit of a better goat. Other cards as well, off the top of my head, the Yokai's okay. I think the Baal and the Beast are both alright, looking at them right now. The Baal especially, this is kind of like the same point I was making with Tamatoa and Scrooge, or well, specifically Tamatoa. There needs to be more deck mill in red or blue that goes straight to bin instead of the vice versa to make Baal a bit more potent, instead of just going, okay, sack all my items and then play her for free. That being stuff like Porpscore, obviously. Do I think there could be a deck that you run Baal, Robin Hood, Sharpshooter, and other bits? Potentially. Beast, kind of whatever. Kind of a cute card. But yeah. I do like Lady Cluck. I do think she's a little bit slow, especially for a 5-drop in terms of blue steel. From what I am kind of aware of, if you're playing something on 5, it is usually Cogsworth. The problem with blue steel, obviously, is that Sisu literally exists, but a bodyguard that has ward is a very, very potent thing, and it does result in your opponent having to trade 2 things into it, usually. And once you get Cogsworth in, it starts getting more and more and more. The main thing with Lady Cluck, however, is that she is likely to live outside of just the pretty obvious ones. Crab with Fox is way too potent. It's a very obvious one that can get rid of things quite quickly, but we'll see how it goes in. I do think it quite nicely fits into these kind of decks, and we'll see what happens with them. The other big cards that I think everyone has kind of come across and just gone, oh no, this card is disgusting, is Ink Geyser. It is a 3 uninkable action in blue-green, which states that you tap all your ink, you randomly select, you tap all your ink, and you and your opponent randomly select any number of, I think it's like 3 ink, and all the other cards that are in your inkwell go back to your hand. And I get why. I get why people dislike this. This is a disruption card, and disruption is always a finicky boat to go around. especially with the fact that it's ramp disruption or mana disruption. The more that I think about it, the more that I've kind of come to the conclusion that the card currently, outside of obviously all the other reveals that are going to be coming out with set 7, it's only really good in one deck, in my personal opinion. Or when I say it's only really good in one deck, I think it's only okay in one deck. And that is a deck that is able to abuse the legendary Mufasa from Shimmering Skies, the ruler of Pride Rock, where the idea is pretty much you use it and you use Mufasa to essentially plus yourself consistently by just getting cards out of your inkwell, getting them back to hand, and just go. You can also run cards like Bal, Fishbone Quill, etc., to try and push this and make this a thing. Do I think that it's going to break the meta? No. If anything, the meta is quite aggressive right now. Mid-range decks don't really care too much, and I think the amount of cards that will go back into your opponent's hand with Ink Geyser by the time that you're playing it is usually about 2. I think the only deck that really hates the card is obviously Ruby Sapphire, that being a more control-orientated card against a more control-orientated deck, realistically. Allowing yourself to play a bit slower and being able to stop things like B-Prep or like the bigger Sisu at any point that you want is pretty potent. I do feel that cards are going to be changed though to stop this. Do I think it's a problem with game design? A little bit. I do feel that there might be some cards that I don't feel can be printed, or it's going to take a while before they can be printed to make it that this card kind of just becomes broken. You just need to be a little bit careful on the design of it, but for the most part I actually think it's completely fine. I feel at the moment the meta is way too fast to make a good enough use of this, and with people going around and saying that Prince John's Mirror, Ink Geyser and stuff like that is going to break the meta, I don't think it is. The other things as well to go over would be stuff like the aggro decks. Aggro green-blue at the moment I don't feel has enough of a solid level 1 game, or turn 1 play, to actually make it reasonable outside of Curse Merfolk, and if you don't hit it you're kind of losing anyway. Or that or Pegasus. But you kind of do have to draw the nuts a little bit on that. And I feel that an aggressive deck that kind of does the same thing but a lot better. Well, when I said the same thing, I mean ending the game quicker and gives you just more card draw and everything, is Amber Amethyst, where you're using like the Hex stuff and being able to draw cards consistently, not really caring about what your opponent gets, and then being able to being able to go for like little small bits of lore with stuff like White Rose, Goat obviously, that's the pretty obvious one, and other bits, and also be able to control the board a little bit with Fox. That's where I think that blue-green kind of doesn't work. There's not really any statted units in it that really benefit from playing the zoo kind of strategy. There are a few questers that quest for 3, but I feel that they are very, very low health, very, very low power-wise, and will just get ramped into very, very easily, especially for turn 2 to turn 3. So, there are some decks that could probably come out of it. I do think it is a card that does need to be watched and people should look out for. Is it an anti-fun card? Yes. I am not going to deny that. I think that this card is going to be utterly brutal when it is utilised correctly. Do I think it works in Bend to My Will / Clarabelle? No. I don't think Bend to My Will Clarabelle really wants this kind of card at the moment, especially with the fact that it's just a stall deck that eventually starts winning. Being able to disrupt your opponent is very nice, but bend to my will, and then playing Ink Geyser right after is going to result in your opponent gaining some tempo back and being able to start answering their board. Clarabelle doesn't really like it that much unless you are able to get rid of a bunch of cards in hand with stuff like Tippo and Fishbone Quill, etc, etc. But you kind of have to utilize your build a little bit differently for that. Other cards as well, as I said, Mufasa. I do think Mufasa is the only card that very viably really likes this card. Being able to ready all your Inkwell to do things like You Came Back, Do It Again, and being able to use your characters to sing after you've played the Geyser is a very potent thing, especially with stuff like How Far I'll Go. You could run One Jump, but I don't think One Jump is that good. The other things as well is it allows you to have an aggressive ramp if you want to, in comparison to the non-aggressive ramp that other decks or other control decks don't really have. This being things like being able to ink You Came Back or Do It Again and not feel too bad about it, especially in the early game. Is it something I'm testing and I'm building? Yes, I have spent a good solid day looking at it and just going, I think that this can be broken. And I am someone, well, when I say broken, I mean broken in the terms of I think there is a way to break the card. I don't think it is a broken card at the current time of play, but I will need to be doing testing, and I will be going very thoroughly through it to make sure that I can figure out what's good and what's bad about it. So, in terms of everything else in Lorcana, I am excited. I am excited for next month. I will probably be doing a box opening for set 7 on the release, or like a little bit later than that, to just have a bit of fun and, you know, go over a bit more of the cards that I am highlighting, to just say, oh, I like this, I dislike this. Maybe go over a little bit of draft as well, as to what I feel would be a good draft card and what wouldn't be a good draft card for when you get to those bits as well. Outside of that, there's nothing really else I want to talk about today, so I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.